Blue skies, amazing cars, racing around the grounds of an impressive chateau on a perfect French summer's day. Except all is not quite as it seems. For this is the heart of England. The 2015 Chateau Impney Hillclimb is a revival of meetings that ran in the 1950s and 60s, and it returns as Britain's freshest historic racing event. The cars making time runs up the kilometre-long course that twists and turns its way around the parkland of this stunning chateau, in front of a crowd of eager onlookers.
Fantastic, it's lovely, it's such a nice atmosphere, it's so relaxed and there's so many lovely cars, I think, and the hill climb itself is brilliant.
It's great to be here. It's such a great moment to have it back at the Chateau, and it's such a wonderful venue that I don't think they could do any better for it.
It's lovely to be here and see all the photographs of the cars that raced here in the 40s and 50s and be part of that and be part of the recreation, the resurrection of that, and hopefully go on to be a really important event for historic cars into the future.
Oliver Way smokes away from the line in the Maserati 250F. Fangio won the last title for the factory in Formula One in 1957 in this car before it was destroyed in the calamitous fire that brought a curtain down on Maserati. Installed many years later around the tricky tree little lock-up on the way in. Great view from the fans around the chateau. Down into the roundabout. Look at the timing being split up with the Maserati Trident on. Attention to detail is wonderful. 1932 Alfa 8C Muletto, Neil Twyman at the wheel. This development car competed in the Targa Florio minus most of its bodywork, which was later added. This car too taking over 20 years to restore. Glorious sight and sound, working hard up the hill. Down into the roundabout. Look at what was once cherry red Italian racing red, smeared with years of mineral oil. Now a deep black red. Great work behind the wheel. Look at this, Fred Harper's Curtis Craft. Now this is an Indy Offie Roadster special, driven in 1957's Indy 500 by Ray Crawford, who was a decorated US fighter pilot before he took up racing. It must have felt relatively safe. Down into the roundabout, big lock-up from the front engine Roadster. Great view from the start line here at Chateau Impney. Away goes Andy Storrs in this unique special, built by Alec Isigonis as a young man. Started engineering and racing this special in 1933. And ran it almost up until the war course. Isigonis then very famous, designer of the Morris Minor, the Mini, many others. They call the world like a half-scale replica of an Auto Union or Grand Prix Mercedes from the 1930s, fully fed in suspension. So early aerodynamic profiling and the outside gear change because there's no room for it inside with the driver. This weekend at the Chateau marks the return of a popular hill climb meeting that last ran almost 50 years earlier.
Well, essentially, the Chateau Impney was the Midlands' premier motorsport venue in the 1950s and 1960s. From 57 through to, call it 67, it ran a speed trial, 550 yards up the drive of the hotel. All the leading competition drivers of the day, sprinters and hill climbers came. British champions such as David Good would come here and test their mettle up the Chateau's quite notoriously twisty drive. And we're here now celebrating the rebirth, thanks to the new owners of the Chateau, the Spollen family, and the launch of my small book about the history.
Chateau Impney was a private home which was built in 1874 by a gentleman called John Corbett, who was a local businessman and he made his money in salt. He had a salt works at Stoke Prior, and he built the house for his wife, who, although she was Irish, had grown up in France, and both of them had a real love for all things French. So he built it for her. The Chateau Impney is a hotel today. We've owned the hotel since July 2012. Since then we have undergone an extensive refurbishment which has put the hotel back on the map, and we are really excited about this Hillclimb event which we hope will establish it as the motorsport venue in the Midlands.
The original event all came about very differently.
It was launched after a lot of negotiation in '57 and became, within 2 years, people were talking about it as being the premier sprint venue in the country. But then, into the '60s, change of management here at the hotel, and entry started to drop off, and the management of the hotel decided they could make more money holding music festivals. And so in the summer of 1968, John Peel hosted a music festival here, headlined by Robert Plant and the Band of Joy and Fleetwood Mac, and it made 17 times the money that the Hillclimb would make. So that was the end of the Chateau Impney sprint in period, basically.
Also here enjoying the atmosphere, Tony Griffiths. Back in the day, he was the man to beat at Chateau Impney.
I did hold the record, which I did in a BRM very similar to this, in 21.1 seconds, and it's a record that simply can't now be beaten because they've altered the course and it's considerably longer than it was. It was an ex-works car, and a quick story, I hired a Silverstone circuit, which in those days anybody could do, and the day before they said, would I mind having the full circuit? And I never thought to ask why. Anyway, we eventually got to the circuit. In the paddock were the full works BRM team. And Graham Hill came over to me, Mr. Nobody, and he said, that's my old car, I recognise the knee rest. What are you going to use it for? Would you like me to take it out and set it up for you? World champion talking to me, and I said, wow, please do so. And he did that, and he did 3 or 4 laps, got his mechanics to make a number of alterations, and then took it out again, and they said, right, in the time we've got, that's the best I can do. Good luck, have fun.
Working trackside, a special guest photographer. Hugh Miller worked here in the 1960s, even if his credentials were a little dubious.
My friend and I were really keen on motor racing and photography, so we invented ourselves as motor racing photographers. We got some letterheads printed and sent them off to clubs and asked for press passes, and we got them. We ended up doing reports for Autosport. They rang up to get us to do something the next weekend, and my mum said, oh, he can't talk to you, he's at school. And somehow or other that put them off a bit, and we didn't get much work after that.
Steve Gray now on the hill in his AC Ace. Beautiful looking British sports car built by the AC company in Thames Ditton. This Rudd Speed developed car, of course not just a successful machine in its own right, perhaps more famous was what the AC Ace led to. It was taken as the basis for a car by Carroll Shelby. And that, of course, leads us directly to the big V8 engine version of this pretty little body shell, the AC Cobra. Here, the 289 narrow wheel arch version of Martin Hunt, the vineyard owner. Essentially an AC Ace with a big Ford V8 built into it. The car's built in Thames Ditton, shipped to LA. Carroll Shelby and Dean Moon fit the engine and gearbox into what became a highly successful Ferrari beating car. Lacey weren't just about open sports cars. This is Terry Edwards in the Aseca, another 6-cylinder Bristol engine car. Quite a rare coupe. built in Thames Ditton. At the same time, down the road in Feltham, Aston Martin building not dissimilar cars. Novice cross on the back of the car. I have to say, he's certainly working this one well. This is a car for the family man with a sporting attitude. Definitely looks like he's going with a sporting attitude at the moment. Great charge up the hill. Michael Quinn in the Jaguar E-Type, described by Enzo Ferrari as the most beautiful car in the world. And there can be few better exports from the Midlands than the E-Type, built from 1961 to 75 at Browns Lane in Coventry, and still one of the most gorgeous mechanical devices ever made. Looks beautiful, drives superbly. Michael Quinn pushing on nicely in this 2+2 fixed head coupe. Beautiful bellow from the 260 cubic inch V8 in this Sunbeam Tiger. Works car Jeremy Holden, pushing hard up the hill. Roots Company with a beautiful Sunbeam Alpine weren't far behind AC in adopting V8 power to make a giant killer. Mark Shears in a very local car, the Morgan Plus 4 Supersports, still built in the same style, in the same factory in the Malvern Hills as they were in period. Probably see not just Malvern, maybe with a telescope, even the factory from the roof of the chateau. This car a circuit racer, Mark being a little more cautious, but he doesn't quite know where the track goes. Enjoying his run up the hill nevertheless. The car looking absolutely gorgeous. We've seen American V8s in the AC Cobra and the Sunbeam Tiger. Now a 289 V8 in this Ford Mustang of Stephen Smith. Notchback shell. It's blue with white Shelby stripes. Sounds great. Gary Wilson in his Aston Martin DB24 Mark I. This is the car that really set Aston Martin on the mass production course. Onto their Feltham Works. Lines still echoed in current Aston Martin design. Now here's a unique device, Peter Newman driving the Owen Jaguar. Origins in 1958, built by coach builder Freddie Owen. 4 hill climbs exclusively, and it's a hodgepodge of various bits and pieces. D-type wheels, you can clearly see. Front suspension from an E-type Jaguar. The drivetrain from an XK140. Less than 9 ERAs competing on the hill this weekend, making for a spectacular sight. ERA, English Racing Automobiles, was founded by racing driver Raymond Mays, born in Lincolnshire in 1933, to build cars to represent Britain against the mighty continental teams of the time.
A short story. I used to race in Ireland when I lived there. I had a little MG Special, and I used to do reasonably well in it. And one day I raced at the Phoenix Park, and these 2 cars came by me so quickly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I'll never forget the feeling. And I said, one day I want one of those. And that was it. It's a 1.5 litre ERA, originally owned by Peter Whitehead, who raced it very successfully in the 30s. It's had 3 or 4 owners since. When I bought it about 10 years ago from a guy called Nick Mason. I think it's one of the most original ones out there.
The most recent ERA at the Chateau was the stunning E-Type, definitely showing continental influences from those pesky rivals.
It came out in 1938. I think ERAs were trying to come up with a more modern version of the C-Type and D-Type, because they're basically cart-sprung cars, and you basically sit on them, not in them. They always said that in the day, a bit like riding a horse. But the E-Type was more of a car you sit in, it's very low, and it was sort of a copy in a way of a Mercedes or Auto Union. It was you know, had features of both of those cars in it. Originally it came out with a swing rear axle, which was a bit fashionable in the day, and that was problematic because the drivers always found that the rear end sort of stepped out and was a bit wobbly. They blamed the chassis, funny enough, and they said the chassis was moving, so they went back to the drawing board. But at the same time, I think they must have looked at the Mercedes and saw that they had these nice de Dion rear end rear suspensions, and they thought, oh, we'll have some of that. So they, at the same time, put the de Dion rear end on it. In '39 it came out with the de Dion and the Dr. Porsche front end, and well, the rest is history really. That's how it's been since.
Plenty of action for the fans to enjoy on the hill. But Saturday evening marked a break from the racing. Time to swap race suit for dinner suit. And the guests had the chance to chat and mingle with the drivers and party into the night.
Oh, it's been fantastic. It's the first time that I've been to one of these places and everything. We're actually here as a big family because it's a great family atmosphere, and it's really interesting.
A lot of the cars that I see here are cars of my childhood, the dream cars, a lot of cars that never existed, and to actually see the cars being driven, some of them are quite unconventional, should we say, and remarkable. Brilliant. Thoroughly enjoying it.
And for the variety of cars here, it's just amazing. I mean, I've got young grandchildren, but they won't be up for it quite yet. But if I can enjoy it, I'm sure they will do in the future.
I go to quite a lot of historic motorsport events, and obviously you see a lot of the 50s and 60s cars quite regularly, so it's nice to see some veteran and vintage cars out here running today, and yeah, they're absolutely spectacular, and some really interesting, very rare individual cars as well, which is great to see. Yeah.
On the hill with a real rarity, this is Edward Way braving the swell with the Austin Hall Scott EB for the what? Well, essentially, it's a mishmash in the style of historic races. 1911 Austin chassis with a big Hall Scott Marine engine. Retro steampunk look, very much in keeping with its origins. A bit of a boat motor at the front. Seems to be handling the hill well, though. A great looking and great sounding device, and evoking the early spirit of motoring. From a very different era, this is Terry Brewster in the LG45 Lagonde Le Mans replica. As you can see, still two-seat sports car. The sports car was very much required in the early days of Le Mans. Riding mechanics would have been absolutely crucial to the car's ability to keep going. Gareth Burnett working hard at the wheel of his Roche Talbot, the 105, one of 4 factory cars. 51, 52, 53, 54. Competed in 1931 and 32. All rescued and now all still competing. In fact, this car won its class at the Le Mans Classic last summer 2014. Pat Blakeney Edwards soaring at the wheel of the 1928 Fraser Nash Saloon, the Owlet. Everybody knows the Chain Gang rep 2-seaters, but this saloon built specially for the Tourist Trophy. Driving it like he's got the Keystone Cops giving chase. What a classic view. Chain drive, friction dampers and twin rear wheels. The ultimate Hillclimb special GN Spider 2 blasts away from the line. Exposed twin cylinder out front. Martin Spencer pushing on hard. Lots of grip from those twin rear wheels. Very wide front tracks. A real Hillclimb special. Really charging hard. Clips the mark on the inside. Too much power for the tyres to handle. Plenty of runoff area, so no harm done. He's out safely. The mark one, incidentally, fastest up Shelsley Walsh hill climb in Worcestershire back in 1926. It's got real heritage, and here is Martin. Charging a little too hard. Caught out.
Massive spin, gone off the course, going down in front of the house. 61, 30.
Reviving the hill climb has taken a lot of planning, but there's been plenty of goodwill from competitors and sponsors alike to get it up and running.
It's fantastic to be involved, and it was really good to actually be invited at the outset to be part of this. Footman James has had a relationship with the family, the Spolland family, for some years, in the aspect from their enthusiasm, their own car collection, and we're keen to be part of. We really are enthusiasts in our own right. Everybody knows Chateau Impney. What they didn't necessarily know is that they had a motoring heritage from 50 years ago. They've re-brought that back now into the 21st century, and so this is a backdrop with this event and all the facilities. It's in the West Midlands, so you can get to it from London or Glasgow. It's a perfect site, it's a great event, and with all the heritage and the enthusiasm in cars from the Spolland family, it's a perfect chemistry for a long-term event.
Blasting away William Way in a car that perhaps produced more racing drivers and engineers than any other, the Austin 7, the most humble family car with its low-powered engine, gave rise to so many racing specials, particularly in this Ulster style, the exposed two-seater racing bodywork, small, nimble, and they allowed for a bit of engineering ingenuity. Many great engineers and drivers, among them Bruce McLaren, of course, cut their teeth first on an elderly Austin 7. Mellows Riley TT Sprite. Riley, originally founded by Percy Riley in Abingdon, moved their production to Coventry. Known latterly, of course, for their luxurious saloons. TT Sprite, great little sports car. Oh, big lock up into the roundabout, understeering off harmlessly into the post. And a little chase underway he goes. We'll have to try and improve that roundabout approach on the next run up the hill. Here's a man on a mission, Winston Teague, at the wheel of his 1922 GN Wasp, which he built as a two-seater and converted in 1923 by Jack Moore into a hill climber. This car should be very quick, built to be driven aggressively by Moore, and subsequent owners have certainly kept that tradition alive. In fact, this car owns the course record for 1100cc vintage cars at Prescott Hillclimb, not too far away across the border in Gloucestershire. And with a clean sheet in the record books, he is attacking hard. Well, here's a rarity, Brian Moore in his Metallurgique Maybach Special. Take a look at this car. Not only is it the epitome of style and comfort, but imagine it with wings and a boat-tailed body. It's exactly the kind of image that Ian Fleming used when he was creating his children's classic Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Glad to see a host of Morgans represented at Chateau Impney, including the evocative three-wheelers, all built just down the road in Malvern.
It's been in the family for quite a long time, so my dad bought it when he was young and used to race it, and it's sort of gone through our family. My brother drove it for a while, now I'm driving it. Because it's got one wheel at the back, so starting off's a bit tricky sometimes. If it's wet, it will sort of spin the wheel and not go anywhere. Going around corners, if you're going into the wrong speed, it lifts the wheel, so it'll lift the inside wheel a little bit, but I've not had any of that this weekend, which is good.
For many, the name Bugatti is synonymous with pre-war sports cars, and there were some stunning examples racing up the hill, including this one that has to be the ultimate barn find.
Spent 50 odd years in a barn next to a fertiliser store, and the atmosphere, the acidic atmosphere, bit into the paint, bit into the metal, and that's why it looks like it does. But prior to that, of course, it was a 1927 Works team car, raced at the Targa Florio in 27, at Monza in 28, and then was sold to a French lady living in the south of France called Madame Yankee, who raced it in the south of France before selling it to an Italian. And of course, in those days, if you were Italian, you had to paint the car red. So the car was then painted red, which is the colour you see now, and put in a shed in 1932 and left there till 1985. When it was bought by a law student who didn't have any money, so of course he couldn't do any work. And because he didn't do any work on the car, it didn't get ruined and turned into a, chrome-plated, shiny, modern restoration.
Competition at Chateau Impney is intended to be fierce but friendly. Father and daughter Chris and Rachel Williams can't help but get a bit competitive though. Chris in this behemoth, the Napier engine Bentley, Rachel in a much smaller and nimble Hardy.
My dad got me into it, so it's always a little bit competitive family-wise, but very different cars, but very much enjoy racing. It's wonderful. It's called the Hardy Special 3. It's a V-twin Jap engine, but it's supercharged, so it's pretty quick. We've had it about a year, so I'm still very much getting used to it at the moment. It does go back a long time. It's a bit of a mishmash of some parts, but about 1933 in general. It does have a Harley Davidson gearbox on it, so it does go up a bit further, but generally it's 1933.
Among the amazing variety of machinery at the Hillclimb, this has to be the oldest 110-year-old Darracq. Mark Walker not only thrashing it up the hill, but also driving it to and from the event on the public highway.
It's the 1905 200 horsepower Darracq, which Darracq's built to break the land speed record. The regulations then had to weigh under 1,000 kilograms, and so what they did was build the biggest engined car as light as they could. So there's no bodywork, it's two seats and a massive great 25 litre engine. The car was built only 2 years after the Wright brothers first flew, and there is no aerodynamics on the car at all. The science hadn't really been invented, so they were just using brute force to go as fast as they could, and in 1905 it broke the land speed record at 109.65 miles an hour, and then 3 weeks later it was at the Florida Speed Week, where it was the first car in the world to do 2 miles in a minute, which is 120 miles an hour. And I think the last time it was driven in period, it got the English land speed record at 120.21 miles an hour on the beach at Saltburn in Yorkshire.
Arguably this is the star of the show, this unique Fiat. Recently rebuilt, the fire-breathing beast of Turin.
It's been an obsession of mine for the last 10 or 12 years. When I was 7 years old, in fact, I got a book, my father gave me a book which had a picture of this car in it, and it was only attracted me because it was the weirdest looking car and the most bizarre looking thing. And so many years later, how many years later, I was very fortunate enough to buy the remains of one of the two cars, and I've spent the last 12 years obsessing about restoring it, and it's here today. Grand Prix racing the Grand Prix was the most important race up to 1908. After 1908, when the French lost the race to the Germans, they decided not to race again. And so there was a period of time between 1908 and about 1912 when manufacturers just wanted to go fast. They wanted to build a car to go fast. And in those days, to go fast, you put a big engine in. To go fast, you put a bigger engine in. And it was just it was like two small boys peeing up the wall in a schoolyard competition, particularly between Fiat and Benz. And it started in 1908 with 11 litres, then it was 14, then it was 18. Benz in 1910 produces a 21 litre 4, and Fiat then in 1911 produced the 28 litre S76. Within 6 months, they all thought this is all getting a bit silly, so this was the last of the biggest engine cars, and it was just about going fast, just about being the fastest.
Despite its incredible pace, this car was never officially recognised as a record breaker.
The Germans broke the record in 1910, did 126 miles an hour. The Italians in 1911 went 138 miles an hour. The problem is the French changed the rules, and you had to go an average of 2 ways in the hour in those days, and that was the first time. And so the French told the Italians they had to do it in a slightly different way to the Germans, and the Italians said, no, I don't think so. And they went home, so it was officially timed at 138 miles an hour, but it never got the record because the 2 ways in the hour rule that was started that year was upheld. So tragically, it sort of it was never really, it never appreciated how fast it was.
From the vast to the tiny, the Mini Cooper S of David West, already seen the racing special of Alex Sissigonis, and this is the car, above all else, that made his name as a designer. Loved by the great and the good and the general population. Not just an ideal city car, it very quickly proved to be a fantastic competition car. David West giving it a great run up the hill here. Light, nimble, and with go-kart handling, it's just perfect for this tight and twisty course. Well, in racetrack form, the Lotus Cortina was the real thorn in the side of the mini racers. Here is John Williams Crook, his car in factory Lotus colours, white with a green stripe. 1600cc twin cam produced more power. The car had more weight to handle than the Mini. Popular in period, they are now extremely popular once more with historic racing drivers and fans. From the Roots Corporation, the Sunbeam Rapier produced a string of exceptional results. A family car with a coupe body, this Series 3 car of George Shackleton, the last and perhaps most successful of the line, who was not only a racer, but also a rally car for the factory in period. This is the Alfa Sprint GT of Reg Baker. Classic Italian line, stylish, and with the 1600cc twin cam revving away a 5-speed gearbox, was one of the great cars of the 1960s. Cross in Bluebell, his well-known Morris Minor racer. Of course, in two-door and four-door form, designed by Alex Sissigonis before the Mini, it became one of the cars that got Britain motoring in the 1960s. Whether you're a family man or a district nurse, it had something for everyone. And it is still one of Britain's best-loved cars. Alongside the Hillclimb, in the Regent Centre in the grounds of the Chateau, was a large classic car auction with some very interesting lots going under the hammer.
£750, fair warning, are you sure? And nil.
Yes, we've got 71 cars on offer this afternoon, and everything from Edwardian cars through to more modern classics, so sort of BMW M3s and that sort of thing, and price range from a few £1,000s through to hundreds of thousands of pounds. So try to cater for all age ranges, and there's a good mixture of road and competition cars. The car behind us is a 1956 Allard Palm Beach Mark II. It's one of the last 6 cars that Allard made between 1956 and 1958, and it was actually on Allard's display stand at the 1956 Earls Court Motor Show. But what's really special about it and lovely is that a couple of years ago it was brought back into the Allard family by Sidney's son and grandson, and they undertook a ground-up restoration, so they brought it back to its former glory. But it's a car that was built by Allard and restored by Allard, which has got to be unique. The guide price for that car, which is difficult to put any kind of price on a car like that because of the history, but the guide price is 80 to 100,000, which, to be honest, wouldn't really cover the cost of restoration.
After some strong bidding, the Allard Palm Beach sold for a healthy £89,600.
The car behind is a 1933 Riley Kestrel 12.6 saloon. It is the archetypal barn find. It has been pulled out of long-term dry storage. I think it's been inactive for about 30 odd years. And it's an important car in the sense that Riley, with the 6-cylinder engine that powers that, the 12 horsepower 6-cylinder engine, that was what Raymond Mays used as the basis for his ERAs. In fact, he's supposed to have had a Kestrel saloon with ERA running gear in it and about 200 brake horsepower, which must have been terrifying. The estimate, £14,000 to £18,000. Sadly, it's worth that, if not more, as a kit of parts. But we sincerely hope, as does the vendor, that whoever buys it will restore it back to its former glory.
The Riley Kestrel may need a lot of work, but that didn't seem to deter the crowd. It sold for £26,320.
It's a 1957 MGA twin-can prototype, And as the title suggests, it was a factory prototype. It was used by MG to develop the engine for the new twin cam model, and also the car was fitted with four-wheel disc brakes, which was a novelty in the late 50s. It was something you'd find on a Jaguar D-type racer, but the twin cam was one of the first production models to have four-wheel disc brakes. It was sold off by the factory at those times when they could sell off prototypes. These days all manufacturers have to crush their prototypes, but that was actually sold off. It was bought by John Good, who was one of the factory development engineers, and he went racing with it the following year. Thereafter, it was passed through various hands and carried on being used as a race car. And the current owner bought it 20 odd years ago. He's an MG enthusiast, but he's not really had time to race it. But because of its history, it's been invited to a lot of events and gatherings and things like that. So it's been more of a show car, a true factory prototype with some period competition history and a nice backstory and a continuous ownership chain. So the guide price is £45,000 to £55,000, which would be towards the top end for a road-going MGA twin cam roadster. But for that car with that history, it doesn't strike us as expensive.
Well, the MG received plenty of attention, but in the end, it failed to find a new home.
14,000 on my right stood.
It's very challenging because there's a lot of, well, there's a roundabout for a start. I don't think I've ever done a hill climb where there's a sort of semi-roundabout to go round.
Everybody's very friendly. It's great to see the interest in these old cars. I remember what it was like before I had one. How fun it was to walk around the cars, touch them, see them, and have people talk to you about them.
What's lovely, everybody can walk around the cars. I mean, there's none of these barriers, to stop people walking amongst them. It's great, people can come in, all right, touch the cars. Yeah, they can. Ain't going to hurt them, is it?
Stunning Alfa Romeo of Chris Mann, this 1953 6C based 3000 PR Disco Volante sports racer, rescued from a museum in Brazil over 30 years ago and returned to track action. Perhaps the circuit at Le Mans a little more suitable to the size of the car than the Chateau Impney Hillclimb. Nevertheless, Chris enjoying exercising this stunning Alfa. Well, with Allard underpinnings, this is the Mark II Farrelak, now driven by Tony Bianchi. Cycling ace Don Farrell was a keen hill climber, and when he wrecked his J2, he had it rebuilt with a 6-litre Cadillac motor, J2 rear end, and the bodywork from the front of a Maserati, as you do. What a gorgeous and unique one-off this is. Driver and owner Tony Bianchi saw it when he was a youth, eventually ended up buying, restoring, and competing in it with great verve. Broad giving it some beams in a Jaguar XK120 with factory hardtop. It was a car similar to this on the eve of his 21st birthday that Sterling Moss drove in a 1-2-3 for Jaguar at the TT in Dundrod in driving rain. From the XK series into the C-Type is very clearly evident. This beautiful C-Type Jaguar in the hands of Julian Gauche. Another car from the Browns Lane legacy of fame. Of course, the C-Type, Le Mans winning in Jaguar's hands. Historic legend Willie Green in the Acuria Cars D-Type that finished second at Le Mans in 1957. Miles away from the line. Problems, it seems. Looks like he may have a bit of a transmission issue. The car finished second at Le Mans in 1957. Also raced there 58 and 59. Away from the hill climb was the Concours d'Elegance, a celebration of motorsport heritage with an unmissable display of some beautiful automobiles, including including a couple of very special Ferraris due to go up for auction later in the year.
We've been very fortunate to have been asked to sell the late Richard Colton's cars. Richard Colton was well known in Ferrari circles, a true tifosi, and very much enjoyed using his cars. So the 1960 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase that's in the concourse tent is an important historic car. It's one of two cars that Colonel Ronnie Hoare bought direct from Enzo Ferrari to start Maranello Concessionaires, the UK Ferrari concessionaire. It was, I think, the 23rd short wheelbase built, and it was while they were in the middle of the alloy competition cars. So although it's steel bodied with alloy outer panels, doors, bonnet, boot, that sort of thing, it's got a competition engine in it, competition gearbox, competition suspension, all that sort of thing. So it was built to a very unusual specification. He drove it absolutely all over Europe, took it back to the factory, did various retrospective rallies and tours with it, and really enjoyed it. He was a driver, that's what he enjoyed doing. It took us a long time to get all the dead flies off the front of the short wheelbase and all the dog hair out of the passenger footwell, but mechanically he always had the cars well looked after. So a fantastic legacy. All proceeds will go to the RNLI, and it's just a great gift to the charity and has the potential to be the biggest single legacy they've ever been given. But a best guess between the two of them, hopefully you're looking around 7 or 8 million.
It's been a great weekend at Chateau Impney with some wonderful cars, all trying their hand at being the first to claim a new course record. Over 200 have tried, and some have failed in their quest for a fast time. James Baxter on the line and blasts away in ERA R4D, the only D-type built by ERA in Bourne. Only 17 ERAs remain in existence, more than half of them here at Chateau Impney this weekend. Raymond Mays originally campaigned this on the hills, bought by Ron Flockhart and later by Ken Wharton, who had equal success. Mac Holbert's been very press-on driver in the car in recent years. Although the ERAs, even this supercharged version, may not be the outright fastest, they will give anything a good run for its money. James Baxter really pushing on strongly here. Loads of vim and vigour as he charges to the line. This is going to be a very quick time indeed. A 44.03 for James Baxter as Andrew Hall gets ready in his Chevron V8. Beautiful closed coupe from the pen of Derek Bennett, the man who founded the Chevron marque, designed in 1968. 2-litre sports racers, Group 4 rules. Little lightweight sports cars should be very nimble here indeed. Andrew Hall really pushing on. Much less dramatic than the ERA, but look how much slick tyre is on the ground, giving him the grip that the ERA with its upright vernacular styling lacked. Looks like a good run from Andrew Hall. Is he going to be quick enough? I sense that he may not be as quick as James Baxter's R4D. David Giddon already pressing on in the Lotus 23B, an engine Group 4 sports car, 1962-63 by Colin Chapman. With a 44.46 for Andrew Hall's Chevron, not as quick as James Baxter's ERA. The Lotus though is going well, and again, light, nimble, a little bit more grip than the ERA. David Giddon pinching every inch on the course here, really pushing hard. Lotus goes fastest at 43.25. Ewan Cameron in the Hale Morgan three-wheeler won't be the fastest, but maybe one of the most spectacular. Look for them picking up the inside front wheel. Big slide from that driven rear. Twin-cylinder engine out front. It's all arms and elbows, full concentration required. Goodness me, this motorised bathtub is charging. Spectacular, great enjoyment for the driver and for the crowd alike. There's a reward for trying hard. Ewan Cameron will be right up there, and there's that inside wheel lifting onto the line. 48.51 for the Morgan. Julian Bronson blasts away from the line in the Scarab Grand Prix car, 1960 front front-engine Formula One car. Stunning looking design built for Mark Trevetlo, who's the son of Williams heiress Barbara Hutton. Astonishing looking car and team. Julian Bronson owns and drives the car with great vigour. Through the roundabout. How many times a Scarab has been raced around a roundabout? Probably not too many that they'd care to admit. Looks like a good time in the offing here. Oh! And the coolant hose has blown. Well, he does well to control the car. Just going to have to roll across the line. And the moment the hose blows very dramatically. Luckily, no damage done to the car, and he kept it on the island despite all the coolant on the tyres. Good job by Julian Bronson. Going to take a little while to clear that mess up. Martin Walford ready, and away he goes in the Lotus 22. Light Formula Junior car and its Cosworth power plant. And this is ideal device for the hills. Narrow, short, agile, and of course light, being a Lotus. 52.15 in the first run, not the fastest, outside a top 10 time. Martin Walford knows the car well and looking very quick. Great run through the roundabout, not too much wheel spin. This is Jack Woodhouse now, blasting away from the line. Lotus 20/22, so it's an older chassis updated to 22 spec. Martin Walford finishes the climb in a 42.96, so the first sub-43 run. That piles the pressure on Jack Woodhouse. 49.02 first run, and into the roundabout. He is behind on the split time, so he's got work to do. Battle between the two lightweight Lotuses to claim victory here and set a new outright Chateau Impney record. To the line he comes. Is he going to be there? A 42.42 fastest time for Jack Woodhouse. Martin Walford second, and the Lotus 23B of David Giddon rounds out the podium.
The morning was wet, so we didn't really have a chance to try again in true anger. But yeah, the afternoon run was really good. Bit of pressure on, obviously having fastest time yesterday, and didn't expect the junior to be able to kind of outperform the later cars. But yeah, it was really good.
Surely this weekend is the beginning of something special as the Chateau Impney Hillclimb is reinstated on the motor racing calendar, hopefully for many years to come.